Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Bob Shear, the Executive Director of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, as well as a former superintendent, principal, and classroom teacher. I'm also a parent, so today's Parents as Allies webinar, Why Family School Engagement is Important to Parents and Caregivers, certainly resonates with me both personally and professionally. We know that strong family and school collaboration is essential to our collective success. So that everyone is aware, this evening's webinar is being recorded and the video will eventually be placed on the Kidsburgh website. We have a number of guests joining us for this session, including Rebecca Winthrop and Lauren Ziegler from Brookings, Yu-Ling Cheng and Melissa Rayworth from Kidsburgh, and Kristine Sorensen from KDKA. I also want to thank Kevin Connor from the AIU for hosting the webinar. At this time, I would like to introduce Kristine Sorensen. Kristine contributes Kidsburgh stories in her role as an anchor and reporter for KDKA TV. She also volunteers as an MC for many charities and events like this. And in 2019, Kristine won the Mid-Atlantic Emmy Awards for Best Feature Reporter for 3 Kidsburgh stories and was nominated for a Golden Quill Award. Kristine has 2 girls and a boy and loves the journey of parenthood. Kristine, thank you for leading tonight's webinar.
Oh, Bob, thank you so much and good evening. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I know you are all busy people and parents, and I'm so grateful you could take this 30 minutes out of your night to spend with us for this important conversation. As he said, I'm Kristine Sorensen, and I'm thrilled to moderate tonight's webinar, Parents as Allies, Transforming Education Systems Through Family School Collaboration. Now, our goal tonight is to learn how families and schools can work together. So we all know through the pandemic, it's forced parents and caregivers and educators to learn more about what the other does, right? I mean, I'd never even knew what Zoom was, and here I am doing this in my son's bedroom until the pandemic. But we now want to make it intentional, make that collaboration something that helps everyone, most especially our kids. And I'm so excited about this because, of course, while you may know me from my work on KDKA, anchoring the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock news, or my Kidsburgh stories on TV or kidsburgh.org or radio or social media, I see my most important job as a wife and a mom. My kids are now 17, 14, and 11. So we've gone through most of the stages. But really, over the past 15 years, I've been involved in my kids' schools. But when I heard about this Parents as Allies and did a story on it, I realized there's a difference between involvement and engagement, and we want more of engagement. And we're going to get really into that tonight. So let's get started right now with our 2 guests. I'm so excited to introduce Yu-Ling Cheng from Kidsburgh and Rebecca Winthrop from Brookings Institution. And Yu-Ling's going to get us started by sharing some background about the Families as Allies project. Yu-Ling.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Kristine. I appreciate it. Thank you to all our guests that are here tonight, as well as the participants in our webinar. I really appreciate it. As Kristine said, we know how busy everyone is. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background about Parents as Allies before we dive into the research. And when I was talking to Kristine about this project, we really talked about that all of us have a role in our kids' lives, whether you're the parent, the caregiver, the teacher, a community member. And so the question that we ask is, how do we become learning allies for these kids? This project is a collaboration between Kidsburgh, IDEO, 100, and Brookings. So Rebecca is here from Brookings, and a lot of our project work is based in their research. IDEO is known for their human-centered design process, and they helped us lead 11 school teams from different districts on a journey on how schools and families can work together. And then 100 is based in Finland. It's a nonprofit, and they helped us scour the world for great innovations in this region, in this area. We are supported by the Grable Foundation. So the reason why we started this work is that we've learned that if there's that trust between families and schools where we can really become learning allies, that the child will most likely have a 10 times better outcome in their educational journey. So that's motivation for us to figure this out. As I shared, the research is based on the Brookings Institution report, where they surveyed 25,000 parents around the world, and 1,600 parents here in southwestern PA responded. With IDEO, they worked with 11 parent teams, and within 2 months, they generated 200 new ideas of how families and schools can work together. And I promise I'll share more information about that later. With 100, as I shared, they found 12 innovations from 12 countries that highlight what families and schools are doing together to make this journey as wonderful as possible for our kids. And then finally, Kidsburgh, we hosted learning conversations throughout the community and got parent feedback on what they're thinking. And with administrators, some of these ideas are already being set in motion. So with all of these great learning conversations, we always start the conversation with this question: what is the purpose of school? So with this, I always ask people, don't think about it for just this year or next year, but think about it over a 13-year journey from K through 12. So we have a poll, and Kristine's going to help us, Kevin's going to help us launch it, and Kristine will take us through it.
Great, thank you, Yu-Ling. So yes, we've got this poll, and we're going to put it up on the screen here so that everyone can participate. And we would like you to give us your answers in fill out your answer, which one you think. Now, I know it's going to be hard to pick just one, but again, like Yu-Ling said, think about kind of the entirety of your child's education from preschool through secondary and maybe beyond. So here's the question: what do you think is the most important purpose of school? Is it, the first choice is to help students gain self-knowledge, find their personal sense of purpose, and better understand their values? The next option is to prepare students for post-secondary education through rigorous content knowledge across all academic subjects. All right, another choice is to prepare students with the skills and competencies needed for the workforce. And then the last one is to prepare students to be good citizens who are prepared to lead their political and civic lives. All right, so think about those real quick because we got lots to get to tonight. Pick one, and we're going to then see what everyone has decided. So I'm going to pick one myself. This is tough because a lot of them are, oh gosh, which one do I pick? All right, I'm not going to tell you which one I picked, but I'm picking. And then we are going to see what everyone has said. Let's see, I think that information is going to show up somewhere where I can see the answers.
Yeah, so just give us one, like
Okay.
20 more seconds. And then
Okay, we'll let everyone think about that because I know it's kind of tough.
It
So
is
it's
hard.
basically kind of self-knowledge of personal values, or is it to prepare for college or beyond? Is it really to prepare for the workforce, or is it to be a good citizen? Those are kind of the summaries.
Yep. Okay, I'm ending the poll and we're sharing the results.
Okay, so here's what you guys said. Half of you said the first option, which is to help students gain self-knowledge and find their personal sense of themselves. The second option got 10%. This is the least amount, which was to prepare students for post-secondary education. 15% of you said to prepare students with the skills and competencies needed for the workforce. And 25%, so a quarter of you, said to prepare students to be good citizens. Now, we're going to go to Rebecca with the Brookings Institution to learn more about their research on the purpose of education and how this might fit in. Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, everybody. We did this research about the purpose of education, one of the questions you just answered, and what Yu-Ling talked about over the last 3 years. We started it before COVID, and we did it with 10 countries around the world, and 10 a lot of them were subnational partners. So for example, we worked with 17 school districts in the US. A bunch of them were in Southwest PA, and you guys, this is a little bit tiny, but you'll see yourself there, Southwest PA. And we surveyed lots of parents and teachers. And I have to say that Southwest PA was the first out of the gate, the first respondents. I don't know what's in the water, but you guys have an incredibly active parent community, teacher community. Maybe it's the great superintendents, former superintendents like Bob. Maybe it's Kidsburgh, like Kristine and Yu-Ling, really connecting. Maybe it's the Grable Foundation, really supporting a lot of this work. But you were the first ones to submit all your results. And basically what we found, we condensed all this research and found that the main real message is that family engagement school family collaboration can improve. There is room for improvement, and COVID is really the moment, I think, for us to lean in on how do we do it differently and do it better. We found that there's a large appetite from teachers. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Yu-Ling. There's a large appetite from teachers. So in your region, the vast majority of teachers, people could answer multiple questions. The orange is, there's only 22% of teachers in the survey response who said they didn't want to change the way they're engaging with families. The vast majority, 80%, said, yeah, I want to engage more or differently or more deeply or with different, different groups. And we found the same with parents. Parents also have different expectations about how they engage with their children's education, their children's school moving forward. And what we found from all the research we've done, and you can go to the next slide, is that if you do family school engagement well, and when we say well, it really is, again, from all our research, you have to have good, trusting relationships at the core. If you do it well, education systems can get four things, and it's very, very effective. It can improve attendance and completion of students. It can improve learning outcomes and how kids do in school and their development in terms of social emotional learning. It can also, and that's the top two goals, and it can also, in the blue goals, really help transform systems. It can help get communities and schools on the same page of redefining the purpose of education for students. What do you want kids to learn and know and be able to do, especially for a changing world? And also redefine the purpose of education for society. This came out quite strongly, actually. People really thinking about schools as sort of the hub of learning and development, not only for their kids, but for their families as well, and playing an important role in society. And in order to do that and have those good things come out, one of the things that we found was really important was for parents and caregivers and families to be on the same page with teachers and school leaders and staff about what does a good quality education look like. If they're not on the same page, again, we looked at so many jurisdictions around the world and evidence. When they're not on the same page, those four good things, those four goals don't really happen. And so we went out in our work to see, are people on the same page? What can we know about that? And again, I'll give you the data. Yu-Ling said it. Can you go to the survey slide of, I'll just give you your region, Southwest PA data. You can see here, we did survey parents and teachers. We also did a lot of focus groups. It was during COVID, so that is something to remember. And we asked these four questions that one of the questions we asked was the purpose of school with the four responses. You can go to the next slide, Yu-Ling, which we just told you about. And I'm going to share with you, you guys picked half of them were the blue with social emotional. I'm going to share with you some of these belief maps. Yeah, you can go to the next. Sorry, I'll cue you, Yu-Ling. The way we show this is to not do a pie chart per se, which this is for Columbia, the country. We did a survey of all the parents in Columbia, and they have like, a third of them want social emotional, which is blue, post-secondary prep academic is orange, prep for the workforce is gray, 18%, civic or good citizens is yellow, 25%. And the way we show this is basically taking that pie chart and breaking it into a radar chart so you can get a shape. We call this a belief map. And we found that this is really helpful to try to sort of visualize where parents are falling on their beliefs. The key thing to know about this is that there's no negative numbers in this belief map. 0 is the middle. And if you go north, it's, you'll hit the end of each line is about 50%. So you hit 30% and make a dot. If that's social emotional, if you go east on academic orange, you hit about 25% and make a dot. If you go south, which is economic, you'll go down. That's about 18%, make a dot. And, same with going west civic. And then you connect the lines. And that's the belief map of Columbia. We want to show you the belief map of a few other jurisdictions. You can go to the next slide. And what we found is it's super different depending on where you are, super different. You cannot assume everyone wants the same thing. So on the left, you really see that in India, parents are very, very focused on the civic purpose of school. That is really where their heartbeat is. And schools do all of these things often, all the time. It really is to try to get a sense of what's important to a community. There you guys are, Southwest PA. The people on this poll had a much higher preference for social emotional than the whole group of parents in your community. Social emotional and academic were pretty much tied. Tiny percentage. If we did the whole survey of people cared about civic purpose, there was a lot of people here who cared about the civic purpose. Maybe that's why you're attending this webinar. You're more interested in civic purpose of education. Not very much. You're in the middle box, not very much focused on work. Versus Buenos Aires, Argentina, super high on social emotional and a tiny bit on the rest. So that was one of our big takeaways. It's very different. Another big takeaway was, what does a belief map of parents look like compared to a belief map of teachers? And in this case, the teachers are in the blue and parents are in the orange. So you saw that same triangle, sort of orange was for parents, academic and social emotional most important. For teachers, it really is social emotional that's super important, much more than academic, actually. So to us, that says that there is a perception gap, a little bit of a difference. Like you're not exactly on the same page. It's worth a conversation talking through that. The other thing we looked at, amongst many things that I'll talk about, is what is really important to parents and to teachers about what makes for a good quality school. What do you guys have in the back of your mind of, ooh, that's a good school, I want to send my kid there? And we asked lots of different things. We did not use these words, but when we analyzed the data, we lumped them into two groups. We had parents who were more focused on sort of well-being indicators of quality. They were, when they said, oh, that's a good school, they were more often looking at, are my kids developing social skills? Are they making friends? Are they pursuing a personal sense of personal passion with an extracurricular? Are they happy and enjoying school? Versus Yu-Ling, can you go back one? Versus the parents who are focused academically on saying, test scores is what's most important, achieving a grade level, really being prepared for post-secondary. We grouped these into two different types of teachers and parents. So now you can go to the next. So the well-being type of parent is in blue, and the well-being type of teacher is in blue, and the academic type of parent and teacher is in orange. And it's a little hard to see, but what I'm going to talk you through is in the upper left, you see parents 50-50. Half of parents are well-being parents, half of parents are academic parents, more or less. However, when you ask teachers, if you go horizontal across, you said, hey, teachers, do you think what percentage of parents are well-being parents or academic parents? They overestimated a bit, not too much. They overestimated a bit that parents are more focused on academics, though not too much. Now you go one below on the left and you see teacher preferences. And so again, very similar to parents, 50-50. Half the teachers are more leaning towards academic, half the teachers are more leaning towards well-being, orange and blue. However, if you go horizontal, you see parents' perception of teachers' indicators of quality. When you said, hey, parents, what do you think your teachers think is most important? Is it these stuff around well-being indicators, or is it academic indicators? Parents massively estimated, they said almost 80% of teachers care the most about academics. So they really overestimated how much teachers care about academics. Now, there's probably very, very good reasons having to do with grades and accountability and what gets discussed in parent-teacher meetings. So for us, this really flags, teachers, why do you think, if you're if you're kind of equally concerned about well-being and academics, why do you think your parents think all you care about is academics? And that is a really important conversation to have. And Yu-Ling, I think I'm handing over to you now. Is that correct?
Yes.
About involvement versus engagement as a really important sort of tool for us to think through how to navigate some of these differences.
So from here, it kind of led to a discussion of family involvement and engagement, right? And so when you think about how schools traditionally engage with parents and families, you know, there's usually a request of how can you contribute? Here's what we need you to do. How do, you know, let's just check in, right? So they're kind of leading with their mouth, telling parents what to do, and they're serving clients. But the reason why we're here tonight is to talk about engagement. And that is where schools start by leading with their ears, and they listen to parents and think about, you know, what they're worrying about, hear about their dreams. And then what ultimately comes from this is gaining partners. And I know, Kristine, you and I have talked a little bit about involvement versus engagement, and it led you to think about how you've interacted with your school.
Well, yeah, it really did. I mean, I have loved being active in my kids' school, you know, helping in all the things like the parties when they're little and running the talent show. But it really got me thinking about engagement. And there have been times when I've been engaged. In fact, just this week, I spoke with the principal at my kids' school and had a great conversation. It actually led to some things happening. But I realized that that took a lot of initiative, and it doesn't naturally happen that often.
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to is creating that intentional space and time to have those conversations. And that's exactly what 11 school teams did. So in the bottom left corner, you can see the school districts that participated in our study this past year. And what this really led to was more empathy and better ideas when everyone got in a room together and listened to each other and started talking about what could we do differently. And so what I'm going to do is share a couple of the things that we learned. These parents called them hacks. So we're going to start with Brentwood School District. So this team, they call their superpowers to be doers, they're kid focused, they're problem solvers. And what they did is they conducted empathy interviews where they talked to different parents and teachers, other stakeholders in the community, of what it is that they can learn about how parents can better engage with teachers and administrators. And so with this, what came back was information overload. Like, we need to streamline communications. And this is what they came up with. They had all these different colored sticky notes, and they started figuring out, like, when my child is in elementary school, here's how we communicate with the teacher. And then we use this app to see the photos of what's happening in school. And then when they get to middle school, we use this. And then when we get to high school, we're not really sure what's going on. We're, you know, our kids seem to be self-sufficient. And then we get information from superintendents. And, you know, Kristine, I know at one point you had 3 kids in 3 different schools. So did you experience a little bit of
Yes.
this?
Oh, it's overwhelming. Yeah. And you get it from so many different sources. You can't even keep up with it.
So in this team, they sat down as a group and really looked at this, and it led the school to think about, like, how do we streamline this? How do we really think about it from a K through 12 journey for parents? The next school district I'll share is Avonworth. So you can see their team superpowers were laughter, ideas, and cultural diversity. So this is a school district, very small, out in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And their hack was to really embrace their community and celebrate the cultures that are celebrated at home. And so what they did is they created an event called, oops, excuse me, my slides are maybe too fast. They created an event called Hi Neighbor. And this was based on community feedback. Their first Hi Neighbor event shared about Ramadan, Day of the Dead, and Lunar New Year. It was curated by parents. The teachers assisted. There was a reading activity, a maker activity. And at the end of the night, kids and their families walked away with a better understanding of who lives in their community. And then they shared ideas of the next celebrations they wanted to talk about in their district. So that's another example of kind of re-engaging, redefining rather, the types of events that schools hold. So this is New Brighton, and I'm going to bring them up because they were a team of dads. And they talked about, you know, make us feel comfortable, lead us in a way where we feel like we can engage easily, bring our kids to something, do something fun. And so that led them to say, let's do a cornhole tournament. And each time we'll bring our kids and we'll be able to discuss a particular topic related to school that'll help us be good parents. So with these conversations that we had, more than 200 hacks were generated from these 11 teams. And so this is a summary slide You can see I've broken it down into various topics like communications, student support, ask parents, ask us questions. We also want to ask questions like, who is it that my child plays with at school? How can we create more empathy? That was kind of the high neighbor event idea. A community courtyard where parents and teachers can meet, a space, an intentional space where you can get together. And there was a whole list of ideas for new types of school events. So we just want to pause here, and we would love to know which one of these ideas you like, or if you have any ideas of your own, we would love for you to post that in the chat box. Kristine, what do you think?
Oh gosh, well, you mentioned the communications. I definitely think that could be very helpful because a lot of people have multiple kids and it can be a lot. But I think what really struck me when we were talking about engagement versus involvement was just the parent teacher conferences, because I would get so excited about those because it's like your only opportunity to really talk with the teacher. But then, like you kind of referenced, you end up talking mostly just about what are their grades, but that's not really all I cared about. I knew what their grades were. I wanted to know all the other stuff. Like you said, who are they playing with? Are they, acting appropriately in social situations? And, what can I do as a parent to help? So I love those kind of hacks that really get that interaction with especially the elementary school teachers. And then as they get older, you barely even know the teachers. So yeah, more interaction is always good.
Yeah, and you can start to see with this how you create real engagement and game partners, right, between families and schools. So I see a couple comments in the chat box that they like the high neighbor event, the community courtyard, like a piazza, which I think is a great idea. So these were ideas that were generated from parent teams, and a lot of the school districts we worked with this past year, they're implementing many of these ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your feedback there. And, this is really just the beginning. There's so much more to go with this project and really making this happen in our community. So let's talk about the next steps now. Both Yu-Ling and Rebecca. Yu-Ling, why don't you start?
Yeah, so at Kidsburgh, we are writing about this project. We're highlighting the different articles that we write about. Melissa Rayworth, our editor, just posted an article about the high neighbor event, so you can read about it there. We're excited to share that this project is going to continue for 2 more years, and we're going to expand from the 11 school districts that we've worked with to the 25 school districts, and maybe even more. We've had a number of school districts reach out to us, and they're interested in participating. And kind of the journey is each school district has to commit to putting together a team that is co-led with a parent and a teacher. You go through a human-centered design process. You will get many grant funds from us to test out your idea so that it doesn't become a financial burden on any school district. And we will share the research from Brookings Institution. We have a new partner, Learning Heroes, who will also be with us. And then 100 will be evaluating the impact of what's happening in your school district. And they will create a spotlight report that'll launch in November of 2023 from Finland. So this work will be shared internationally. But there are some little steps that you can take now, even if your school district isn't a part of it. So I'll share one and I'll turn it over to Rebecca. But one is, just to have that conversation in your own household about what do you think is the purpose of education. I'll admit my husband and I did not have that conversation until I started working on this project. And I said, I know what I think, but I've never actually sat down with my husband and talked about it. And then what's really interesting is when you sit down and talk to your kids about it. And one of the school districts we visited, which was Newcastle School District, they actually had students answer that question alongside their parents. And it was interesting to see where there was alignment and maybe there was a little bit of misalignment. So that's one thing that I'll throw out there, but I know Brookings has a lot of great tools as well.
Thanks, Yu-Ling. Well, the number one thing that we're doing for your region is partnering with Kidsburgh on Parents as Allies. We're also continuing to work. Kidsburgh is a member of our family engagement network, as is AIU, as is a number of other districts in the region. And we're continuing to work with them, but happy to add more partners. One of the things we're all focused on now is we have a tool in the playbook called a conversation starter tool, which is really a little bit of a guide for how you can have that intentional conversation and collect some of the data, make your own belief maps for your own district or your own school if you want. And we can share via, Melissa, I guess via you, we can share a sign up link that maybe you can send out to other folks if they want to sign up for that. And we're happy to send those tools and get people going, because there was one question about how does a district start.
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic. And that's really the formal presentation, but we wanted to leave some time for questions and answers. And I'm seeing there are several questions. Everyone's excited about this and saying, how can we participate? So yeah, what should someone do if they want their school to participate or see if they might be able to, take part in this? Yu-Ling.
Yeah, so I dropped an email address in the chat box. It's kidsburghpgh@gmail.com. That comes to me. And so let me know about your school district and I can reach out to your superintendent. We are having an info session the second week of February where superintendents can learn about this process and what the commitment is. As I shared, it's a 2-year commitment, but hopefully it'll go by fast and a lot of resources, including financial resources, are provided to the school. And also, even if you're not one of the school districts that are part of the program, we'll also be doing community events so that we can interact and share what we're learning along the way. We firmly believe that everything that we learn, whether you're a school district or a parent, should be shared broadly so that we can all learn from it.
All right, that sounds great. And I know one of the questions was about cyber schools. Have you ever had a cyber school participate in this before?
I have not had a cyber school participate in this, so please do email me. I am open-minded and we can definitely talk about that. That would be an interesting experience.
And I wanted to go back to one of the comments because I thought someone had a really interesting one. It was about a student support group. And I know that so many kids have really faced a lot of challenges during the pandemic. There have been a lot of reports about kids with depression and anxiety and all of the changes that have happened. So how do you get kids as part of this as well, and not just the parents and teachers talking, but really, of course, the whole point of this is to help the kids. So how would something like that work where we can really help the kids directly?
So I know some of the hacks that some school districts came up with were interesting and tried to help address kind of the mental health issues surrounding students today. One school district, they cheekily called it address teen drama, but the idea is really meaningful. They wanted parents to be able to have a safe space to share with the administration or teachers of drama that may be happening between students, and then to create a safe space at school for these students to come together and talk through it and to try to help eliminate that drama. Another idea that came from a different school district, another hack, was about creating support groups, not just with the parents, but also with grandparents and other caregivers who may be caring for your child. Families today, there's a diverse group of what families look like. And so involving everyone, every carer, every community member, and how they can help support that student. So those are 2 ideas that came out of the different hacks.
I love that. Well, and I know the people, of course, who are making the effort to be here tonight on this webinar are the ones who want to be active, who want to be engaged. So I think if we can be the leaders, then we can also get more people who may struggle a little bit more to get engaged. Is that kind of the point that, we have to get everyone involved in this, not just, the parents who are already maybe involved and asking their kids about their education?
Yeah, so I'll start, but I'll throw it to Rebecca because I know she's seen some interesting things happening across the world. But I will say when we put together the teams, the school teams, we intentionally ask for the parents that aren't always the first ones to raise their hands, right? Yeah. The parents who can help contribute different ideas or show a different lens that the school may be missing. So it is something that we hope to have everyone involved in, and we start small. We start with a team, we grow. And so in the case of Avonworth, they started with a small team of 5, and then they did a community session, and that team grew to 30. And then for the High Neighbor event, they have a team of 15 real working members working on it. And they're all parents alongside the administrator and the teachers. And what I will say is the principal at that school district that is a part of this group, He said it's one of his favorite projects. He feels really connected to the families, to the students, to the community. And so it's making a positive impact all around.
I just want to second that point, Kristine. It's a really, really important point. And what we certainly found in our research is that doing the exact type of thing that Yu-Ling just described, being intentional about making sure you're getting at least representatives from all sectors of the community, can make a really big difference. And just to note that, the folks probably on this call are leaders, and, huge gratitude. They probably keep their school communities going. But that there are a lot of people, and we heard this in the focus groups, who would like to be more involved, but either their work schedule, they feel like they don't know the right people, they're a little bit shy. It can be a little bit intimidating for people who feel sort of a little bit on the outside how to get engaged. So I think really trying to get our parent leaders to reach out to those who aren't naturally engaged, if you aren't already doing that already, can go a long way.
And kind of along those lines, if maybe you are one of those people who, maybe isn't the first one to jump in, what about just like a one-on-one? Because we do get the opportunity to meet with teachers in a parent-teacher conference, but how can you help make that what you really want it to be, rather than, or are there other ways, whether it's through email or other things that you would suggest to really make sure that you and the teacher are on the same page of what you want out of school? Because we saw sometimes there is that disconnect.
So again, I think that goes back to making that intentional space and time. So when Kidsburgh hosted these community conversations, let's say we were in a group of 50 people, I'd always ask, have you thought about the purpose of education over 13 years, right? And, a good number of people would raise their hands. And I said, and my next question would be like, did you have this conversation with your partner, right? Hands would go down. So at least half the hands would go down. But the question that would always kind of really make a big difference was, have you had this conversation with your child's teacher? Right. And usually then there's only one or two hands left up in the room. And so I think it's important to share. And this project led me to share with my child's teacher. And I was really surprised by how my child's teacher was like, I love that you're sharing this. And I now understand better, and this will help me. And now we email regularly about various things that might happen that kind of address the school. So it's that intentional space and time, and I'm going to throw it over to Bob, because I know you're a former superintendent, you're at the Allegheny Intermediate Unit working with all these school districts. What are your suggestions?
I think one of the things that's important is, we work so hard in schools to make every student feel included, right? Meet them where they are, academically, socially, emotionally. Well, how can we do that for parents, right? So it's the idea of engaging parents. So where are they? What do they need to know? How do they want to engage in the school? And I think the graphic you had up before is so important. It's listening. It's leading with your ears. It's really understanding what is it that folks are asking of you, and then how can you sort of follow up on those things with parents. So that's the analogy that I often make. All the effort we put into kids, in making them feel included, how can we do the same thing with our parents and caregivers?
Kristine, on that, I'm just remembering what one of the people who participated in a focus group in Southwest PA in our research said, and it stuck with me because I thought, oh, I should do that. And I study this stuff and I didn't even think about doing that. And she said every year at the beginning of the year, she, in the first week of school, she writes a letter to her child's teacher. And she says what he's like, what she thinks about him, what her hopes are, and then she puts her philosophy of what she's looking for the year of education in it. And she gives, not in a demanding way, because teachers the first week are crazy, but every year she does that sort of proactive reach out. And she said she's never had a bad reaction, and it's always opened up a bit of this deeper conversation that Yu-Ling talked about. Because remember, don't remember because I don't think I talked about it, but teachers, one of the things they dread most is interactions with us parents. Not every teacher, but it is high on the list of things that teachers are most anxious and worried and scared and don't like the most, is interacting with parents, because they often feel very attacked. So again, if we can be proactive and like sharing in a positive, constructive way, it might go a long way to really opening up that dialogue.
I love that idea because when I just went through middle school open house, a couple months ago, a couple teachers did say, hey, write on a note card what you want me to know about your son. But it was so quick, I didn't have time. I'm like, oh man, it's not coming to me right now. I love that idea of taking time, writing down what it is you want them to know, because I mean, you're right. We're all in this together. Teachers are doing this because they want to help their kids. And they know that by engaging with the parent, they're going to be able to help the kids better. But yeah, if you can do it in a way where it's, you have time and then the teacher has time to take it in later. I love that idea. Thank you. And just real quick in the comments, someone had mentioned about the Chill Project, the mindfulness program by AHN, which I've done a news story about. And again, these are like the kind of programs I think that, when we put our heads together and smart people come together from AHN and other people who care about kids, you come up with these great ideas like the Chill Project that are really helping address a real need. And that's what I love about this program is each school district came up with such unique things different than the other one because the needs were different. I mean, you have a different population, you have different kinds of kids, you have different kinds of parents, different, communities. And so it's not going to be the same. But of course, there's so many great ideas. I'm sure, we can always get inspired by others too.
It's true. And I will add across the different school districts, some of them would choose to focus on, the younger kids. Some would choose to focus on that middle school transition. But I think what Melissa and I are starting to notice as Melissa's writing stories and we learn more about these projects is now other parents are saying, well, how do we be a part of this? And can we expand, to high school or to, the older elementary kids? So it is something that even if you start small, it starts to take off.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about at our time and I don't see any more questions at this point. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue to follow our stories on kidsburgh.org, where we will continue to share how the Parents as Allies project is going, both the research and the meetings at the various schools. And for all of you who are interested in participating and possibly getting your school involved, just go to the email address that Yu-Ling mentioned. Yu-Ling, say that one more time, just in case someone didn't see it.
Yeah, it's Kidsburgh PGH, so KIDSBURGH @gmail.com.
Yep.
And Melissa just posted the link for Kidsburgh's website that kind of shares all of our Parents as Allies stories. And my email address is also on the website.
Fantastic. Well, Yu-Ling, thank you. Rebecca, thank you so much. And thanks to the AIU for hosting. It's been my pleasure to learn so much more about this incredible project. I can't wait to follow it and continue to share stories. So thanks, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Have a good evening, everyone.